Well, after all of that, it's now time to build. As a lot of you would be aware, problems can arise during the construction process. Problems will arise during your development project. What's more important though is how the problems are dealt with. As a fitting conclusion to this program, we're going to be speaking with Peter Jankovic from SA Building Consultants. Peter has had more years of experience in the property construction industry than I've had years of life. So let's go speak to Peter. Peter, thanks so much for making the time to speak with us today. Peter, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Angela. I work in the building industry all my life. I'm an old carpenter, emphasis on old, 61, that makes me really old. Did the old 5-year carpentry apprenticeship, and from there moved on in the building industry, working in different parts of it, supervision, construction management, and also ran an Australia-wide building company as the manager for many years. And very heavily involved with the Housing Industry Association, which got me involved in committees, the Building Advisory Committee for the South Australian Government, the Australian Building Codes Board, helped write the housing provisions for the Building Code of Australia, Volume 2, helped write the South Australian Housing Code, involved in overseeing Australian standards for housing, and led me to consulting to the industry in around about 1989 I started, and from there I'm a troubleshooter in the building industry where I inspect houses, we write written reports. I'm an expert witness of the courts. I was appointed about 4 or 5 years ago, and so I see the pain, if you like, when builders and owners get into trouble, and I act for owners and builders regularly. I have a look at those building disputes. I'm also an arbitrator and mediator. I belong to the Australian Institute of Arbitrators and Mediators. So I get a really good view of the building industry.
Great. So Peter, you're well qualified. The reason we've chosen to speak to you is that you essentially see the worst of the things that can happen on site, and you have probably more of an independent view of things. Can you just tell us a bit about the kind of things that you'll do when you go on site to have a look at a building project?
Right. I get asked to consult for various parties, owners and builders alike, and I have to remain independent. I've always have. When I go on site, I have to make sure that the building complies with all of the documents, the agreed documents, the approved documents. That's documents that are approved by the councils and private certifiers, mainly in building, not in planning. I have to make sure that the work complies with the building rules and Australian standards. All of the standards and all of the building rules are minimum standards, so I look for that. And where it doesn't comply, as being an expert witness, I don't just say it doesn't comply, I also note why and what needs to be done to rectify. And in some of the areas I look at alternative solutions rather than pulling something down. Is there an alternative solution that makes sure that whatever the problem is I'm looking at will meet performance requirements of the building codes and standards. There's a lot of builders, architects and even engineers who come to me occasionally and will with a problem and ask me to go and have a look, so I get a pretty good insight on work that is, if you like, faulty, and a lot of the work that I see that's faulty is usually after construction. It's a pity that some of the trades and builders couldn't see that work afterwards and realise some of the smallest mistakes will cause the biggest problems. Wet areas are the biggest headache, or leaking is the biggest headache, particularly of wet areas, and I'm known as Mr. Wet Area Man. I spent many years helping to write the building rules for wet areas here in South Australia, and it is such a simple thing that can go wrong, a simple thing in wet areas that can go wrong, that causes a lot of destruction, particularly to walls and floors. The other problem I see a lot is leaking of balconies and windows. We nowadays have gone back to a lot of single wall construction. That single wall construction means you've only got one skin, so stud wall, whether it be timber or steel, and clad on the outside. And the method of flashing windows, some of the builders or some of the contractors don't do it very well. Rely on silicons, and so we see a lot of damage from leaking from round windows. Those two are probably the biggest ones I get. Non-compliance issues. The building rules say that, in fact, Section 45 of the Development Act says that you can't build anything structural. You can't change anything structural during the building process. It's got to be done in accordance with the approvals, and any changes to anything structural must be approved by the approving authority. Now, we see a lot of times on site where builders can't get a material, or the carpenters or a bricklayer or whoever decides that they'll do it a different way, and it's okay. And I see a lot of that, and we have to make sure that the builders comply with those building rules, particularly with structural matters. And I see a lot of that as well. And another part of the building that is a concern is the part that holds it up, and that's footings. Very important how footings go down. I do a lot of inspection of footings as the concrete is poured, and if the concrete hasn't been placed properly, or there's been water added, unprofessionally added, a failure can occur at the footings, where particularly here in Adelaide we have a lot of reactive soils, and if it's not done properly, you get cracking of the house and so forth over the years to come. We also often have to look at a finished house that's cracked because the owners haven't done what the engineers have asked them to in regards to earthworks around and landscaping and watering regimes. We have this drought now, and nowadays we don't have the lawn anymore. Well, people notoriously had lawns right around their house, and as soon as they stopped doing that, they weren't adding the water on a regular basis, and so your soils start to shrink, and as a result of that you get cracking. And so we look at that sort of thing, and where I've got to get an engineer in, I get an engineer in. I don't do anything outside of my expertise. So we get involved in a lot of court cases. Being an expert of the courts occasionally will ring me and ask me to go out and see if I can have a look at a problem and report back to them. I get the chance to actually mediate a lot of them and get over those problems. But one of the jobs that I like to have is to avoid either builders or owners going to court. There is nothing worse than winning a battle in a courtroom only to find that the costs you haven't got the costs, and the costs have just overwhelmed the total thing.
What are some of the costs that can be associated with that?
Well, nowadays, if an owner has a problem with a builder, and he goes to Consumer Affairs will ask straight away, go and get a consultant to do a report. A consultant will charge you anything from $180 to $200 an hour, some of them a bit more, and that's to do the report. So you've got an initial report, so you might be up for $500 there without thinking about it. Then, if you finish up in court, a solicitor will cost you nowadays anything from $350 to $380 to $400 an hour. Then if you finish up in the district court or Supreme Court, very rare, but district court a lot, you'll need a barrister, and a barrister will charge you anything from $1,200 to $1,500 an hour. So in 1 hour you can have a group of two parties spending $2,000 each in 1 hour just talking to each other. And that a lot of that time, and particularly in building disputes, that money is unrecoverable. And so I've seen people spend $20,000 going into the district court and they haven't even started yet.
And these disputes can last for quite a long time too, can't they?
Oh, a long time. I've been involved in ones in the Supreme Court that have lasted a long time. But the time you see a solicitor and the time you get your day in court and it's all over and you shake hands, you can be up to 2 years and sometimes 3 years away. It's a long drawn out process. It has a toll on the owners. Husbands and wives have pretty big arguments about it, especially when you get into a no-win situation where you've spent so much money you can't turn back. And so I make it, any of the jobs that I get involved in, particularly where the solicitors aren't involved, I try to make sure that the last thing that happens is that people have to go to court, and we'll try to settle the matters. I never compromise on issues in regards to the building requirements, the building materials, all the elements of the building has to comply, and if it doesn't, I do look for an alternative solution if I can, as long as the performance requirements are met and the approving authorities are aware of it.
Okay.
And we do that a lot. One of the biggest things that people do is they go to court on principle, and it's the worst thing you can do.
Yep.